In this session, we are going to learn about what is list, set, and map. So we'll call this list numbers to store some values into the array that we wanted to create. So we are using brackets right now, and we are going to end the statement with a semicolon. And in over here, we wanted to provide the value. Once we have provided multiple values, we are separating that up with a comma. Whenever we are storing something, we need to have a data type. So this is a list. So now we wanted to call this a list, and we have provided some values over here because this is a data type of list, and that's the reason we are using list over here. So we have all these values over here, which are integer values. Whenever you are limiting out the list, you need to use a type parameter. So we wanted to have list parameters. So now we have open and greater than and lesser than. In over here we have integers value, so we wanted to give it an int, and this list can could be anything. We have integers value, it could be a string, it could be a boolean. It totally depends on you what you wanted to store in the type parameter that you have right over here. We have the list of numbers, and we wanted to print out, so we have learn about for loop. So now we wanted to use for loop, so we use for, and after that parenthesis. In over here we wanted to provide the value that we wanted to access. For that we are going to say int I, and after that the list numbers that we have, so we are going to use in, and after that this variable name that we have right over here, and we are going to use curly brackets. And over here we wanted to print I because we wanted to get the index of these values. If I hit run, so we have got all of these values on the sequence that we have from 1 to 45. And if I wanted to add another value into this field, what I can do is just type list numbers, the variable that we have locally created, and give it a nickname, right? We are going to use a dot, and after that at, and in over here we wanted to provide the value that we wanted to add. For now we wanted to add value of 365, and in the statement, so this 365 will fall after this 45. If I run this application, as you see over here, the value has been added on the last. So as you notice something, or we have some duplicate values because list can consist duplicate value. It doesn't necessarily matter if you provide the value multiple times, because in the list everything has an index. So if you just create a list and try to access that, you'll get that multiple objects. There are many methods that you can use whenever you wanted to use the list functionality. For that you have to use a dot, and after that look for yourself what you wanted to have the functionality for. We are not going to go all of this functionality because I want you to learn some things by yourself, because when you learn something by yourself, then only you're going to get better. So that's the reason we are not going to go through this. So if you notice something odd, we have unlimited list. We can add any numbers that we wanted to have, and the length is not limited right now because we haven't set any parameters for that. So for that we wanted to have another list where we wanted to give it some parameters to follow, and let's call this list numbers n because it has a limit. So now before giving any value, we wanted to have a data type before. So now we are going to use list over here. L should be capital, and now we wanted to give it a parameter to follow. So for that we wanted to have a list over here because this is a list and it needs to have some parameters. If you have remember about the null safety, that any list cannot be empty, it needs to have some sort of value. We are providing the empty list right over here, and we are just saying that, hey, just take 5 parameters for example. This needs to get verified first. For that we wanted to have a type parameter, so we are going to provide an integer value over here. We wanted to make it a promise to this code that we are going to fill this entire list. For that we are going to use filled, and after that we have 2 parameters to follow. So I wanted to have 5 characters, so that's the reason I'm going to start from 5 to start the index by 0. So now we have provided these 2 values, and we are going to end this statement right. So in over here we wanted to have a line break. So for that we have provided the line break because we want this list to have a separate value and this list to have separate values. So for that we are going to use for in loop once again, and now we are going to provide this initial values. So we have a list of numbers L, so we are going to replace that value right over here. So the index is same because we are just limiting out this for 5. We wanted to print out. If I hit run right now, we are getting 5 zeros. It's because we haven't provided any value. So in order for you to provide the value, it's basically simple. You need to use the nickname that you have given your list, and after that you need to use brackets. In these brackets you need to provide the value. So the first index is 0. So now how does the index work? So I have shown you already, but let me just clarify for you guys to understand it better. The first index of this value is 0, and after that 1 2 3 4 5, and it goes continuously. Whenever you are thinking about index, it needs to start from the 0 and it will go on continuously. If you counted once, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 and 9, this is 9. We are starting from 0, so that's the reason it's 8. And if you guessed it right, this is the index of 9 because we have added this value separately. We have index of 0 right now, some value on the index of 0. So now let's say that you want to provide 1. So we have provided some values over here. If I hit run right now, as you see, we have got the values from starting to the bottom. If you wanted to add the values that we have added like this right now, you can just try to use this function, but let me just show you what I'm talking about. We have a list of L, and after that we wanted to add a run. We are going to get an unhandled exception error. So why is that we got an error? Because when you have a list which is a limited list that can only follow the parameters that you have given it to follow, you cannot use the functionalities of the list class. So that's the reason you need to know, if you are limiting out your list by the parameters that it needs to follow, you cannot use the list functionality with that. So we are going to replace this, and we are going to delete this part, and now we are going to run our application again, and we have got the input that we wanted to have. So we have learned about what is a list, and the list is simply based on the index. It starts from 0 and it goes continuously from 1 to 3. We wanted to convert this list to a set, so now we are just going to copy this list right over here. We have, so we wanted to have a s first, and after that list number, so we have replaced this value right over here. and after that use dot, after that from. So now we wanted to provide this entire list that we have over here because everything over here is an element. If I wanted to add another number that we have added right over here, I can just simply just go ahead and type the name, and after that add any value that I wanted to add. We are going to add the value that we have 45 over here, and we are going to talk about why we are converting this in a second. But first, variable this name that we have locally defined. If I hit run, as you can see, we have got this values. In that we have 453 two times, but we are only getting it once, and we have 45 two times, but it is only counting as one. Why is that we are getting this value once? Because we have talked about on the opening session of this video, set only consists of unique number of items. So if you have a multiple items that is repeating, so it will be ignored. So that's the reason set is what we call a unique set of items. So in over here, everything is based on the index that we have right now. But in the set, we don't have the index values. We have something called as hashset. How does the hashset work? So if you have learned about programming and if you know some sort of programming, you know that every code is bunch of zeros and ones. In over here, whenever we are writing some code, whenever this code is getting saved onto the memory that we have right over here, that code will use a hashset in order to convert the value that you have provided. So I have provided my name over here. That value will be converted to a native binary code. So that code will be saved onto the hash value, and that hash value will be accessible through a hash table. So that's the reason whenever you are saying that we are getting this in a sequence, but you can get any value because set is an unordered things of collection. So that's the reason you cannot rely on that we are getting the value from one to last. So set can give you any value at any time. So that's the reason you cannot rely on that. So the last data type of this video is called map. So whenever you think about a map, you know two things. One is the location of the map and another is the name of the country that you are looking at. In the map, we have two parameters to follow. So now we wanted to create a map. For that, we are going to use a map keyword, data type, and after that we wanted to have a type parameter. In that type parameter, we need to have two properties because it needs to know the position and the name. So that's the reason it has two parameters. So normally in the form of key, we use integer value and we use string values. It totally depends on you. The key value should always be unique. So in over here, we wanted to have an integer value. So we call that in and separate that up with the comma, and after that we wanted to have a string value. So we have provided this two values right over here. I wanted to make it simple and for you guys to understand it better. So that's the reason I'm gonna just say this contact info, and after that I wanted to provide some values. So now we wanted to have a map over here, and in the parentheses we are not going to provide any value right now. So now we have our data type ready which can store map values into it. So now we wanted to use this data type that we have created right now, and now we wanted to give some values. So how do we give the values? Like we have talked about index. So map does not follow index formulas. What does the map follow? We'll talk in a second, but first we wanted to have two values. So now we wanted to use brackets. In over here we wanted to give it a key. So the first part is integer value, so we wanted to give it a key. So example, this is your contact info. So suppose this contact info is your phone number. So your phone number is 23, and we wanted to say that hey, this phone number belongs to someone called Majid. So now we wanted to provide some other values. So we are going to initially provide like 5 values. So we have provided some values over here, and we wanted to access all of this values. So now we cannot use the for in loop because we are trying to get the index, and this is a map and it uses something called as hash map. So now we wanted to use another loop which is called for each loop. So now we wanted to, how can we call the for each loop? As you have already learned about that, we use the nickname that we have given, and after that use a dot. For that we are going to use for each, and in over here we have two things. One is a key and another one is a value. So we already got that part. So now we wanted to print out these values. So now we wanted to use a shorthand operator. So in over here we wanted to provide the value. So we wanted to print out these two values. So we can use a print function for that. We are going to say print, and in over here we are going to use a string interpolation. So let's say that first key is your phone number. So we'll say phone number, and after that a dollar sign. In order to use a string interpolation, first we are going to say key, and after that we wanted to say a person name, and after that again dollar sign, and after that value. So we have provided these two values right over here, and we are going to run our application and see the output. So we wanted to give it a line break. My phone number and my name is printed over here. So this is one way you have to define your list. And if you wanted to say that hey, can we directly provide all the values after this part, so you can do that actually. And we are going to run this. So as you can see over here, we have a phone number printed right over here. These are the two ways that you can define a list. first you can separately insert the value that you wanted to insert, and another way is that you can directly just use the key and after that the value that you wanted to insert. So you can have a boolean value and you can have a string double or any type parameter that you wanted to follow. So this is what basically a list and a map and a set is. This is what we call fixed length list, and map is something we call a thing which has a key and a value. So this hashset is defined by the hash table, right? So how can we access this value? And as you can see over here, it is printing from top to bottom, but it is not the case for this as well. It doesn't have any sort of an index. It is completely depend on the hashmap class. If you wanted to know about hashmap and classes, you need to go study about that on the detail, but we don't have that much time, so that's the reason I'm just giving you a brief example what is a hashset and hash maps are. So we are done with the list and collection part. So now we wanted to talk about one thing, and which is called spread operator. I have cleared out all the code that we have in order to explain something. So now we wanted to know what is a spread operator and what is getter and setter. So now we wanted to have a list, and in over here we wanted to have a type parameter. So we are gonna use string right now. We wanted to have names, so that's the reason we are going to say names, and in over here we are going to provide names value. So we are going to provide two values. So first name is mine, and we wanted to have another name. Let's call this whatever you wanted to call it. So now we have two values. Whenever you see that we have created an object of anything, a function or any value that we have, so we are actually copying that object to a new one. So now we wanted to create an object for this names as well. So we are going to create an object for that, new names, all this new names, and we wanted to store this into a variable. So we have this new names, and now we wanted to print out all of these values. So we have learned about for in loop. So for that we are going to use for, and after that parenthesis, and over here we are going to use variable I will be the index where we wanted to see all the values. We wanted to see all the values in the new names that we have created an object with. So we have given that a new name, and now we wanted to print out the value. So now we can just go ahead, use print, and over here we can just provide the value of I and end the statement. So now we are going to just run our application, and we have got the values that we have right now. So now what we wanted to have is that we have created a new object. Now we wanted to change this second value to a new one. So for that we are going to use the object name that we have created, and let's give this value of Sam. We have provided this value, but we have an error. It's because we have provided the value directly and it needs to know the index. So that's the reason we are going to use brackets again. In over here we wanted to change the value from John to Sam. We are going to talk about why is that we are doing this right now. So we are going to provide 1, and after that we are going to hit run. We are trying to change the value from Jan to Sam, right? So we have successfully changed the value. So now we are accessing this new object that we have created. If I try to access the original object that we have and see the value what we have right over here, so as you can see, the original value that we have in the list has been changed to a new value that we have provided right over here. So this is a problem. Whenever you wanted to create a new object of the list, you wanted to keep the original list separately, right? So now we don't want to have that scenario in our life. So for that, there comes an operator called spread operator, when we can actually copy the list into a new list. So how you can do that? We are going to use brackets, after that 3 dot, and after that the list name that we have over here. So for that we are going to say list names, because that is what we have our name right over here. And now if I hit run, so we are getting the original value that we have. So we have successfully copied our list to a new list. With the help of spread operator, we have created a new list. So in over here, we are printing out the value. So this print statement, it's getting some value, right? So that is the reason we call this getter. And if you notice something out, we have set the values right over here. So whenever you are setting a value, that is what we call a setter. And whenever you are printing out or you are getting some values, we call that a getter. So this is basically what the difference is between getter and setter. And this is what we call spread operators. It is really useful for you if you know when to use this.